Hello, we are live. Well, not really. This is not live. This is going to be a recorded one because I am in Austin, Texas, and I am in a different place than normal for recording these, and the Wi-Fi here is not very fast. It's fast enough for most things, but I don't think it's fast enough to do a live stream of 4K. And because I'm making a documentary, well, I'm not. I'm the subject of a documentary. Um, we are doing video vlogs, and they asked specifically if I could use 4K. So I'm going to start shooting these in 4K now. They've been in 1080 before, and so I just wanted to ensure the best quality. So I'm just going to record this straight to my laptop using 4K and then upload afterwards. But none of that's really needed for you all. But I still kind of want to shoot this live. I don't want to do a whole lot of editing. That's a lot of work, and this is supposed to be a very low effort update vlog podcast type stuff. So let's just jump right into it. I drove on November 1st, 22 hours roughly, from Virginia all the way to Austin, Texas, through Tennessee, through Arkansas, took a stop in Little Rock and stayed the night, and then finished the rest of the drive the next morning through Dallas, all the way down through Waco to Austin. And I've been having a blast here. I was worried because last time I was here, 3 weeks was, I got a lot accomplished in 3 weeks, but it was also very exhausting. And so I was worried about coming back here and doing that. And being that I'm going to be here for 3 months, 90 days, that's why I drove. I'm taking things a lot slower when it comes to the comedy scene and being a little bit more selective because I feel like I have enough time. I don't need to hit everything every night. And I'm seeing a lot of great comedians and comedy shows while I'm here. And so I'll update you all on that. But I just really wanted to let y'all know I'm in Austin, Texas again. I'm here for 3 months and I'm already getting bookings, so that's exciting. So December 2nd, I'll be at Rozco's. I'll be doing a 6-minute comedy set in between a show that happens there. I believe it's a lesbian-oriented show for like putting people together and like maybe dating. I'm trying to remember exactly the context of the show, but it should be really fun. I just connected with someone who organizes the show, and they asked for a reel tape. I sent them my 10-minute YouTube video, and I guess they liked it enough that they booked me for 6 minutes. So that's exciting. I also got booked on Double E Comedy's monthly showcase at Vulcan Gas Company. So I got offered a spot on December 26th, the day after Christmas, and I don't care what day it is, I will take it. And so I'll be doing 10 minutes there. And so shout out to Ernest for hooking me up with that. Ernest was also a recent bucket pool on Kill Tony. He also was a Black Hawk crew chief and retired from the military. And so we have that connection there, right? Like I used to be not a crew chief, but I was a 15 Tango and a crew member. I was a door gunner. I never progressed as a crew chief, just did the mechanic stuff, mostly in a Delta company, all the way up to a staff sergeant, and was a phase, not quite a phase team lead, but like a maintenance lead. I was supposed to be a phase team lead, but I went to flight school. So, but I was a maintenance lead for a little while as a staff sergeant, and then went to flight school. So we have that bond. Army aviation is small, and we were both, working on the 60s, and then of course I became a pilot for the 60s. So it was really kind of him to throw me a bone, and we actually had an open mic together. I saw him at the Creek in the Cave. We were in the same. It's a selective open mic, so every week they pick people who email in, and so it's random. And so I got picked for last Sunday's open mic at Creek in the Cave, and I had a blast. I did 4 minutes, and it was so much fun. Got a lot of laughs, and Ernest saw me there, and so I think between that and also just trying to network with him a little bit, and I went to his showcase Friday as well, showing support and stuff, and I'm just trying to build a community of people, and be everyone's cheerleader. Like there's so many people doing so many unique things with comedy here, and we're not really in competition with each other. Like if we all do well, then just like a rising tide will raise all ships. I especially don't feel like I'm in competition with anyone just because uh, my story is so unique. Like there are other trans comics here, but our perspectives are so different, and that's what's nice about it. Like mine's very much a military political advocacy slant. Like I'm choosing topics specifically that are my story, but also because I want to talk about them, like trans shooters, for example, or stuff like that. Not so much of the like dating stuff. Like I'll probably get into some of that too soon. I think there's a lot there, but other trans comics tend to cover that, and so I really want to hit on the material that's so unique to me that no one else can tell. Little things like working at Chick-fil-A and stuff and being the cow, like that's not very common. And so I like telling that story too because I have a fun left turn in that one, which isn't trans related at all, which is pretty fun. But then like the story of coming out to my wife and begging her to please become praying that she becomes a lesbian. And I just feel like that's unique. And then of course the whole crash rumor stuff, the jokes there, and being fired from the military, being a Black Hawk pilot, like that stuff. I recently been testing this one joke, for example. It's telling people too early that I'm trans because I'm paranoid, and so I blurt it out, and I introduce a concept, like, oh, it startles people like hand grenades do. Like I remember hand grenades in the military making people jump, and so I said, oh, it's a fun game where I throw these trans grenades around, and it's like I used to be a guy, and and I pantomime like chucking grenades, and it's like I can still parallel park. I know what I want for dinner. Like these are like little things like the out me that's just plays on female stereotypes and stuff. So it's just, I don't know, it's fun and it gets some laughs and it's a great opener because it kind of warms up the crowd to like, hey, I'm gonna joke about this as much as you probably want me to, like, or more. Like it's gonna be fun. We're gonna point out exactly what this is. It's different and it can be funny as long as it's not hacky. I mean, I do have some one-liner dick jokes, of course, and I feel like some of those are great because they're quick, punchy, and like they're funny. But I try not to focus my whole set on just chick with a dick type stuff, you know. um, but yeah. Anyhow, so made the road trip, got here, got some bookings, um, having a blast. I'm trying to grow my name recognition, so I'm doing a little something different with social media lately. I started posting more like going out to the club type outfits, a little bit more revealing, a little bit more cute, I think, full body, trying to show off my figure and stuff that I'm really proud of because I've worked so hard on it. And they do okay on Instagram, Facebook, but on X, like they blow up. Like it's crazy. Like I posted one last week, it's almost at 100,000 views. Mostly because so many turfy bot accounts don't like that, you know, there's a moderately attractive trans woman, I guess, that's happy. And so they jump in there and a bunch of bots or, you know, unnamed people jump in there and just copy paste turfy talking points. Oh, you're a dude. You're always the giveaways that you're still a bloke. And it's just like, well, I know you're from the UK when you say that lingo. So, thanks J.K. Rowling for that, I guess, for having an army of sock accounts mobilized to make money off of attacking trans people. But at the same time, it gets me a lot of engagement. And look, it gets me a lot of followers. Like I went from like barely at 3,000 followers to now 4,500 in the last couple weeks just from posting some of these photos. Like, and I had like flat growth for weeks, posting really smart, clever, and educated opinions. Pff, boring. Why does like shut up, bitch? Like we don't want you to think. So I did try this tactic where I'd posted something kind of controversial, but like very important to me in the political landscape of trans politics. And I linked it underneath a scandalous photo and said, "Hey, this is tricking you into hopefully reading my thoughts on this important topic. Some cleavage and some um, learning or education or something. I forget what I said, but like basically like here's your meat and potatoes, and also here's some dessert." And of course, it brought a lot of views to that political document, but once again, not a whole lot of discussion on it because it's just either a bunch of chasers, a bunch of other trans people that, see the photo and like it and follow me, which is very sweet. And then, of course, a whole bunch of people that don't like that I exist commenting on it. And some of them following me too. Like they follow me just to comment on everything that I post and say something negative. And so I've taken to blocking some of those people, especially the super body ones. I'm just like, like I don't need the engagement if this is all that it gets. I've blocked probably 100 and something accounts, um but yeah, that's kind of what I've been doing, and it's been growing my Twitter, which is exciting because I'm approaching getting close to 5,000 followers, which is great. I need that bigger audience, because believe it or not, a lot of things I'm trying to do here in Austin, um, especially with comedy, like getting bookings, is who you know and how much of a following you have. How much can you bring to a show type thing. Um, I think funny is part of the equation, but when it comes to some of this stuff, these organizers of these smaller shows, they want people in the room. So, like, if they think you can bring someone into the room, they'll probably book you. I mean, I think also they want you to be funny, some level of funny, but like, I would be in the same situation if I was hosting a show. I would want to book people that have a huge following because hopefully that means more people will come. So I'm not knocking it. It's just that's the reality. And so I'm trying to grow my accounts because that'll help with the name recognition and hopefully getting more bookings and stuff. My Instagram started growing some more too because they finally fixed the pseudo flagged as spam issue I had for months, even during Kill Tony release. I should have gotten way more followers from that, but instead my Instagram was flagged, and so when people tried to follow me, it would warn them and tell them, "Are you sure you want to follow this person?" And so I think that turned away a lot of potential followers, and then I couldn't follow other people. And so on Instagram, that's a very common way to network with people. You follow them, it gives them a notification that someone followed them. They look at who followed them, and then maybe they follow you back, and maybe you interact or something. And that's part of how I've been networking now, and it's been working. But for so long, I couldn't because I couldn't follow people because it would say like, "Oh, this person needs to approve you because you're like flagged," and support couldn't help me, even though I pay for the blue check mark and the extra support. They're like, "Oh, it's just our algorithm." And so, like 5 support cases later, I found out I switched from a professional account back to a personal account, and it fixed it. So it had something to do with me being a professional account that had some previous usernames because I had changed my username because it used to be my before I came out publicly account, so it had an obscure name, so I could just post photos of myself and just exist online as who I might transition into. And so when I transitioned, I let go of the old accounts because A, those got doxxed because of the crash rumor, but then B, because I just wanted to start with a fresh account that had a different type of following and stuff. So that's the whole reason behind it. But because I changed my username and it was a professional account, I guess it was warning people that I might be trying to do some sort of organized scam or something. I don't know. Switching it back to personal fixed it, and I'm not trying to run ads, so there's really no use in me having a professional account, and I don't even come close to monetizing because of the small account that it is. So the professional account doesn't do anything for me. And since it's personal, I was able to combine it with Facebook's verification, so it's a discount to get both accounts verified. Win-win. Why couldn't they have just told me that for months. I struggled to get growth. I was at 1,500 followers for months on Instagram, couldn't get anything unless I like begged people to follow me and told them to go through the process of hitting yes, I agree, I want to follow this person. So it's nice to see some growth now. And hopefully if I get on Kill Tony again, everything's ready, everything's primed for a new group of people to start following me. Once again, all of this is just so that I can get better and one more easily booked on podcasts and things too, especially. But then also on I still want that Rogan seat. I want to sit across from him and talk to him and tell him my story and give him a different perspective than I think he's heard. And he would be I'm sure he's going to be open to it. It's just that he hasn't had a guest on like me. And I really think I can do some good for the trans community, I think. While I don't say everything the trans community wants me to, we'll get into that in a little bit. I pissed off some people. While I don't say everything the trans community would want me to say, I am the kind of person that can sit down and talk to Rogan and bond over many things before we even touch on the trans topic. So I think I'm their best advocate in that environment, to be honest, because I'm not going to just shut it down or shut him down or anything. And I think I'll still drive home the really important parts, maybe pediatric and sports. I might not drive home, but I'm going to drive home the military issue, trans military service, and I'm going to drive home a lot of the we do exist, even if you don't agree with all of the policies. Like we still have some basic human rights and deserve some basic human decency in the discussion. And there's not a lot of that right now. And so I want to bring some civility back to how people talk about us. And not that Rogan's been talking to us poorly, but he does tend to. He's made the distinction that there's real trans people and then there's these others that predator loophole and all the things. And a lot of times when he's talking negatively about people dressing up as the opposite sex, he means those nefarious characters. The problem is he may or may not say trans people, he may or may not say like dudes in dresses, and that sounds like he's talking about all trans people. And so I want to acknowledge some of what he's saying is true, a very small fraction, and then also stress to him how many everyday trans people like me who aren't public, because I wasn't before all the craziness, are just living our lives and not making a fuss. And we're getting fucked over because of it. So that's what I want to talk about with Mr. Rogan. But I got a gym membership here and I'm going to start going to the gym and, get some nice routines going. I've made some really cool friends. I became friends with Juanita, who is another Kill Tony bucket pool. She's gone on it actually a bunch of times. And she's also trans and stuff. And then she introduced me to this girl named Lauren Allen. And she's really fun and spunky and a ball of energy that's all over the place. And it's so wild and entertaining. I just love hanging out with both of them because Juanita's like kind of like me, like just like real chill. And then Lauren's like, the bubble and the life, not the bubble, like bubbly and the life of the party. And it just makes for a fun vibe, having a mix of us hanging out together. And so I'm really excited to hang out with them some more. What else? I've signed up for Kill Tony every Monday and the Mothership Open Mic every Monday since I've been here. So 3 times, I think. I haven't gotten picked for either, but hopefully soon. Let's see what else. Bumped into Tony a couple of times. He gave me a hug and fist bumped me, and like it's nice because he recognizes me. Like there's a lot of people that have been on a show, that didn't stick out, but I've made a pretty good impression. And so when he sees me at Mitzi's or something, he just, he acknowledges me, which is really cool. Like it's very sweet of him to do that because he could just be like, fuck this bitch, but he doesn't. And that's the same with most of the people around, it's busy, and if you don't recognize, but when they do recognize me, they're really kind. And um, I go to so many shows at the Mothership. I've been to like 20 now this year that the whole staff and everyone there recognizes me. And so much so that just like, hey, Joe, welcome back. Like, I've been there so many times. And so that's fun because they're all comedians too, except for like some of the wait staff and bar staff, but they're great too. Um, but it's nice because I've gone there so many times. They know me. They know I'm trying to become a comedian. They know I'm trying to get stage time. They know I'm signing up for the open mic. And I've been also friending them on Instagram because I can now. And for some reason, comedy is driven on Instagram, not so much on Twitter or other places. And so a lot of them are starting to like follow me back, or I'm being suggested to them now because I'm in the right circles and the algorithm's pushing me to people. A couple of my clips on Kill Tony and other things have actually popped recently for some reason randomly. Like one just took off to 20,000 views when it was doing nothing for a long time. So I don't quite understand that one, but which is great though, like because it's bringing more people to my account. It's showing me around to more and more people in the industry that I want to work in. And we'll see. And another reason why having a huge, or it's not huge, bigger following is so important to me is because I am actually in the process of shopping a memoir around. Um, yeah, so I wrote the first 10 pages of what I think would be a great narrative work describing everything that's happened to me in the last year, plus a little bit about growing up with gender dysphoria and coming out and like just kind of like those main beats. And so I've been working with a couple folks that have some connections and are being very kind and just helping me write a proposal to shop around. And we are feeling pretty good that someone will want to pick it up because it's just so unique and it's so relevant to the intersection of politics, culture, and everything right now, with comedians having such an influence in politics right now, me being the target of misinformation and conspiracy, me pivoting to comedy to wield some of that influence and power in the political space. And then, of course, me doing it in Texas in Rogan Sphere. And I say that in a lovable way, not a negative way. Rogan Sphere, because if it wasn't for him in this club, there wouldn't be a scene here. If there is, it would have been tiny. And so he's created this meritocracy for comedians to grow and get better and legitimately have a pathway. And I've seen it. I've seen, the Cam Pattersons and folks climb. You've got Kill Tony if you want to showcase yourself in front of millions of people. You've got the open mic at Mothership, which Adam Egget is the comedy booker. If he's there, which the one I went to, unfortunately, I finally got picked for, he wasn't. If he's there and he likes you, you might get a callback. And then if you get a callback and you do well, and like you get a legitimate shot, you start doing sets at the Mothership while also like working the door and stuff. And that's like huge because now you're a door guy and then you're a club comic and then you're on tour, just in a couple years, which is amazing because Austin is so much cheaper to come here and do this than New York or LA. And the caliber of comedy here is insane. And there's like 5 or 6 clubs just in the same, few block radius. So there's so many other opportunities too to get stage time. And I've said a lot of this before, but I love it here when it comes to that for this industry. From what I can understand, it's the most accessible and the most inviting, and the most potential to actually get a legit shot at making it. Like Cam Patterson's on SNL now. Ari Maddie's touring the world and has had specials. And like a lot of these folks were, started at the Mothership, or were very new when they got there, and between Kill Tony and the Mothership and the Austin scene, it's just incredible what they're doing here. And so I'm happy to be a part of it, and hopefully I make it. Hopefully I can become a regular at the Mothership. So I'm looking at possibly moving here permanently or more permanently. My job has an office uh, not too close, but not too far up in Dallas area. And so because I have to do a couple days in the office a week, I've been commuting up there once a week, but I could get transferred to the office, I think, if I really wanted to. And that would give me the flexibility of being in Austin more, or I could just live in Austin and do the god awful commute once a week and stay the night in Dallas and then come back down. Until I can match income and completely let go of the day job, if that's possible. But at the same time, I'm not doing any of this to make money. Um, I haven't made money because it's about sending a message. It's not about the money, just like the Joker says in The Dark Knight. And so if I never make it, that's fine. I just need an audience to tell my story for a while longer. Hopefully get a spot on Rogan's podcast or one of the other large podcasts like that. And then I think I can feel like that chapter is complete. And then maybe continue pursuing comedy, but just not with so much, I don't know, veracity, if that's the right word. So that's where I'm at. I don't know. I'm kind of addicted to it, so maybe not. Maybe I'll just keep going just as hard as I can at it because it's so much fun getting laughs. It's tweaking jokes and making them better, and then different audiences react differently, and so I don't know. It's just fun. Other updates about me: I got a breast augmentation. I don't know if you can notice. They're a little bit bigger. Something I kind of wanted to do for a while, but it had been on hold with all the advocacy work, and so I just came back from the UK and was like, you know what, I'm gonna book it and do it, and I did real quick. And then I also got a hair transplant. About 2,500 hair follicles were transplanted. This is a wig, so I'm excited to have a really nice hairline soon, so I can stop wearing the wig. But it takes close to 12 months after a transplant to really get everything grown out again, and so I'll be with this for a little bit longer, but I really wanted to get it done so that way I could start that clock. And as soon as I got to Austin, I did it here because it was a little bit cheaper here than in Virginia. And so I knocked it out here in the first week and recovered and then started hitting the comedy scene. So that's my updates for that. I did want to show you all these documents. Let's see here if I can add it. This is what I did to piss off the trans community. I decided to take a stab with the help of AI. I ingested a bunch of my thoughts on this stuff and used it to gather some other things so I could come up with a revised standards of care for gender dysphoria. SOC, 2025. So the preamble, this SOC restores some aspects of WPATH's SOC 7, diagnostic rigor and caution, with additional guidance. So if you don't know, WPATH is the World Professional Association of Transgender Health. I think that's what that stands for. It's a big organization that wrote a lot of the transgender guidelines. That's really the important part. And when they released SOC 8 in 2022, they didn't put any age limits on youth, and they really opened it up to self-identify. Diagnosis is not required. If you say you're trans, affirmation only model type thing. And I think it didn't help with the backlash, and I think some people started pursuing transition that maybe shouldn't have been. And it just, I feel like it didn't have enough adequate recommendations for guardrails. So I was like, well, we could just go back to SOC 7, but I feel like SOC 7 needed some updates with some informed consent when it came to adults and stuff. So there was a little bit of both that I cherry picked and added my own pieces. And so this one restores the aspects of diagnostic rigor and caution, but with additional guidance to youth. medical intervention is the rare extreme exception, never incentivized or coerced, as in threatening suicide to get transition treatment. And I mean that more politically than I do. I don't think that kids were necessarily doing that, but I think a lot of people, including parents, were being told things like, rather have a would you rather have a dead son or a living daughter type stuff. And I think that scared a lot of people into doing things what they thought was right, but maybe not what was best. Especially in natal females that transition, and they have a higher chance of detransition, I believe, and are more likely being stuck in the social contagion that people say exists. And so coerced, I think that's part of it. And then adults, this can be evidence-based regression. You get a diagnosis, you inform consent, hormones, surgeries, whatever. No big deal. Universal, so for kids and adults, it's going to be a therapy-first approach to minimize regret, give more transparency to what transition medically is. And also, something that SOC has never done is detransition support. So I think it's very important that if someone does decide to detransition, there is a pathway for that too that's safe. And, all of the things for transition, but for detransition. And I think that's very important. So this SOC has no affiliation with WPATH because they definitely wouldn't endorse this, and I don't know anyone at WPATH. Made by me, Joe Ellis, with the help of AI. So, 1. Formal DSM-5 diagnosis is required for all ages. You can't say you're trans and get hormones, surgeries, anything without being diagnosed with gender dysphoria. So this closes the self-ID loophole. And there's a legal framework that is after this that closes it legally. So this just closes it medically. So that way we make sure we're protecting people and they're getting a diagnosis. All of that stuff. Look, if you have gender dysphoria, it's not hard to get a diagnosis for it. If you don't have it, it's going to be hard to get a diagnosis because you're not going to meet the criteria. Simple as that. Some people call this transmedicalism. The idea that trans is inherently a medical condition and all of these things and not a expression. And I totally agree with that. Like, that's how I feel about. Now, I'm not saying you can't be gender diverse as far as how you present and what you want to do, but when it comes to hormones and stuff, like you need to have a reason for getting it other than I just want it. Like, otherwise, how can you justify insurance companies covering any of this? And we want that, right? We want insurance companies to cover transition care. But if you say you don't need a diagnosis, anyone can get it, anyone can be anything they want without a diagnosis of gender dysphoria, then it's not a medical condition that requires treatment, right? It's elective at that point in the eyes of the insurance companies. So we need to think about that. So I think we should go back to a diagnosis because I feel like if you get a diagnosis, that means you had to see a mental health professional, which means you had to talk about your life, which means you had to talk about the possibility that you might also be autistic, have other trauma that could be causing it, socially being pressured. Maybe all your friends are trans and for some reason you feel like you might be questioning and you're just unsure. And not that trans people are trying to convince anyone to transition, but you know what I mean? Like, people can be impressionable, especially people that don't have a strong sense of identity themselves yet and are unsure. And so I want everyone to see a mental health professional if they're thinking about going down the road of transition, not only because it should be a medical condition that's treated, but also because if you are going to go down the road, you should have a relationship with a therapist to make sure that it's going to be successful, to make sure you can get through it, because it's really hard. It's really difficult to change your entire life. It's not a, hey, I'm this now, and then everyone celebrates you and you move on. Like, cool, but that's not how the world works. We would all love that, but it's not. It is limiting to your life to transition. Now, that doesn't mean people can't have great, fulfilling lives and meet all sorts of other things, but like, for example, it's limiting in the fact that fertility is going to be limited in some way based on the medical decisions you make. The people you get to date, right? The people who are attracted to you are going to be limited. These are just facts. Like, I'm not saying that's how it should be or that it's right. It's just facts. The ability for you to pass, which if passing is important to you, so that way you can live your life at peace and not be noticed as a trans person, that's all subjective to each person. And you don't have a whole lot of control over that, especially how much money do you have to be able to afford certain procedures that aren't covered by insurance? Clothing, like all these different things. And then even still, you still might not pass. So you need to be aware of all these things before you just start this road of medicalization, because now you can always turn back, but once you're on it for a certain period of time, it becomes harder to get rid of some of the changes you get, especially natal females who start taking testosterone. Once your voice is deepened, it's stuck that way. How do I know? I had testosterone going up because I was born a dude and I went through puberty. And guess what? This voice is deep. Now, unless I want to go get it cut up and thinned out and risk, something to my voice, as someone who does stand-up comedy, probably not going to do that. So I can do voice therapy. I can try to, just try to bring it up a little bit higher and speak a little bit more feminine and work on that like I have been working on. But it's tough because once I start thinking about really important things, it gets slower. Also, when I really want to condescend and talk down to people, I get deeper. I feel like that's a holdover of mansplaining. Sorry, there's a little diatribe, but it's a bit I was thinking about. And because it's kind of true. I'm just like, do 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 do. Then someone says, I'm like, oh God, you idiot. It's like, why do I do that? Why do I associate speaking deep with talking down or authority, right? Authority, I think, is where it comes from. Especially like on aviation radios and stuff. It's like, you don't want to sound like this. Like, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing. You want to sound really confident and strong and military and masculine. So, I don't know. It's just funny. But you can't undo that very easily, if not at all. If you're a natal male and you start taking estrogen, you're going to grow breasts. Those don't go away. Now, the fat will if you get off of them, but there's still going to be a little something there, even after the fat is transferred back. And what, you're going to have a mastectomy now? Like, so it's important to be sure this is the right path for you and to have someone help you along and take those baby steps and figure it out. 2, comprehensive psychosocial assessment as part of that, right? So as part of that, full history is done, comorbidities, what is your support, all those things I talked about. Are you capable of making these decisions, like mentally, like sound? Like, do you have the ability to give consent? Some people are not in a state, right, that they could do that. And so you want to stabilize other health conditions first, because transition is not going to make it easier to deal with all the other bullshit. If you come in with bullshit like baggage, that baggage is still there the whole time. You're making your whole life more difficult while you're transitioning, and then maybe you get to the other side, and guess what? That baggage is still there. So it's important that if you have anything else going on, that you stabilize that. Now, it doesn't mean eliminate it. I'm not saying like you cure your bipolar or something, but is it stable? Are you in a place where you've done everything you can, you've taken care of everything else, you've got a really good foundation set up, and now you're ready to take this plunge? And now you're ready to take these little baby steps towards transition, if that's right for you. This is not saying that that wasn't happening, by the way, that there weren't health providers doing this, but there were examples of health providers not doing this. And it was because of how lax the guidelines, I think, was because how lax the guidelines became. And so I want to stricken. I want to restrict this a little bit more and put some more guardrails and guidelines around it. So that way, if someone's not following this, someone who is getting the treatment can look at it and be like, they're not following the standard. They're just telling me, yeah, here's hormones and take them, and everything's hunky dory, and yeah, I might not be able to have kids, but that doesn't matter, So I think it's important. Documented persistence. So if you're an adult, like 12 months at least of evidence that this has been bugging you for 12 months or more. For children, 24 months. No recent onset trends, peer influence, or trauma, like, oh, my dad died and now all of a sudden I'm trans, right? Both can be true. You can have a dad die that triggers you to do some soul searching and now you realize this thing. Like, not saying that's not possible. I'm just saying, like, make sure that that doesn't have something to do with it, because trauma can manifest itself in the weirdest of ways. As someone who thought for the longest time they weren't trans, right? Like, so it's like you just don't know. And so you want to make sure. So, I have dysphoria for a while. I had it for decades. I didn't know what it was, but I had all this evidence of it. And then when I finally figured out what it was, boom, I've had it for more than 12 months. And I didn't start transition until 12 months anyway, because I was scared to death to do it. And I wanted to make sure it was right. And I did not want to uproot my whole life for something and then decide, oh, this isn't for me. And now I've hurt so many people in my life. All right. So the youth section, if you're pre-puberty, no medical intervention. Now, this is harsh, but also I'm open to arguments. This isn't end all be all. This isn't written in stone. Open to arguments for this, but this is what I think. No medical intervention. Psychotherapy, counseling, you can socially transition, names, pronouns, whatever. That's fine. No medical stuff. Only because desistance rates are high for children before puberty. And so watchful waiting could be something, right? Watchful waiting along with counseling and mental health counseling and all of that. Once you're in puberty, puberty blockers could be allowed, but only in exceptional cases, Tanner stage 2, and if all criteria are met. Severe, unremitting distress. Clinical, profound collapse. Independently verified by 2 psychiatrists, not just one. And despite 12 months of intensive and multimodal therapy, you name it, everything, right? Nothing's working. No evidence of any secondary incentive of like social reward or avoidance of other conditions or abuse or trauma. Dysphoria predates puberty, as in it's not onset with puberty, because puberty can be very confusing for a lot of people, and you might not like the changes your body is going through because it's weird and different, and that could easily be confused as dysphoria, right? Especially with everyone self-diagnosing themselves through TikTok these days. So you had to have documented dysphoria before. Now, you could still go through puberty and have dysphoria afterwards. Like, that's definitely a thing. But puberty alone is not enough of a reason to have intervention. So, if you don't start dysphoria until puberty, guess what? 24 months before medical intervention. No untreated comorbidities. Once again, stabilized for 12 months of anything else that it could be causing it. And then unanimous approval by 3 independent specialists, 1 external to the clinic, a pediatric endocrinologist as well. And that's just to make sure, right? Like, there's some accountability. It's not just one clinician, one parent, one child. There's been a secondary review. Now, this might need to be loosened because maybe everyone's an asshole and nobody wants to unanimously approve. So, like, this is not supposed to be one and done. We're supposed to start here, start this off, see if it makes sense, go through these gates and loosen it where it needs to be loosened, where we're catching people for no reason, like stopping them for no reason, but then also adjust where people needed to be stopped. So that's very important with the detransition tracking that I want to also do. That's part of this. So your parental consent plus adolescent consent with full disclosure about some of it being a little bit, I wouldn't, experimental. I guess some of it's kind of experimental just because not many people have gone through it. And then unknown long-term effects, you really don't know. Puberty blockers mandatorily stop at 16, so that way you're not on them for too long. And then if an internal review board approves the research protocol with annual reporting, and then default equals no blockers, though. The burden of proof is on the clinic to prove that these are justified. Now, once they're 16, say they got on puberty blockers, they met all the criteria, and now they're on them until they're 16, mandatory stop. That's when you can start cross-sex hormones. So that's why it's stopping. So cross-sex hormones are prohibited, but only but allowed if blocker criteria was met, plus they're at least 16 or older, and they've been on 12 months of blockers, mandatory fertility preservation. So that's just because at that age, it's so early to decide whether or not you want to be infertile for the rest of your life. And so I think having a mechanism that preserves either eggs or sperm is important. Automatic. Now, when they get to a certain age, they can let it go, but I think it should just be preserved by default at that age, just in case. And then you have a 3-person panel that includes a regret consultant or a detransitioner. Now, this might be impossible to do, but in a perfect world, how great would that be? That someone who is for the idea of transition for children, but realized it wasn't right for them, can walk someone through those thought processes just to make sure, like, hey, look, like I did this, it wasn't right. This is actually what was bothering me, or this is why I got confused. I think that would be great to have that perspective. I don't know if it's possible. So letter H might just have to go away. Not H, I. The 3-person panel might just not be doable. Automatic cessation at 18. So, say if you're on blockers and you're on hormones, blah, 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 it stops unless you meet the adult criteria. Well, guess what? You will. You can make informed consent. You already have all of your diagnosis. You're good to go. And then you move into adult transition, which is informed consent. For hormone therapy, you just need a referral saying you've met your criteria for gender dysphoria, informed consent, and you hear about all the risks and infertility and your lifelong commitment. No real life experience required. For surgeries, 12 months of hormones plus 12 months of living transitioned. So that doesn't mean 24 months. That could be at the same time, but you had to have gone out as your desired identity and operated in the world, at least, before you get something cut off or adjusted. And I think that's just important because if you're already on hormones, you're probably already doing this anyway. But I really just want to make sure that before you get surgeries, you've gone out into the world and you understand what it's like living this way full time, even without the surgeries. So if you want to get a surgery, you just need some mental health referrals. These numbers can change. It says 2 for genital, 1 for chest, but it could just be 1 for both if we don't think there's a reason to have 2. I would love to consult with someone on this. And mandatory fertility preservation counseling. That doesn't mean it's mandatory that they actually bank anything. It's just, hey, look, here's your options. Here's the things to use. Here's how it works. That would be great. But you never know. You might want to have kids later. So it's good to have those discussions. Universal guardrail. Robust, informed consent model. written and verbal documentation, talk about the risks, talk about the regret rate, talk about infertility, talk about detransition. Alternatives, offer them. Hey, if you don't feel like this is right for you, guess what? You can do therapy or you can just do social transition. You don't have to go through a medical process if you don't need it. Dress how you want, act how you want, go out into the world. No guarantee of happiness or passing, which has to be stressed. There's no guarantee that this will make you happy. Making you happy is a whole thing in itself. Now, it might remove distress, which allows you to be more happy or happier more often or satisfied with your life, but this is not going to fix everything. And then, of course, passing. There's no guarantee that people won't always see you as trans. Lifelong follow-up and a transition pathway. So annual health and mental health monitoring, at least once a year, right? You check in and everything's going good. That way it can be documented and studied over time. And then also for yourself and your own safety. But then if you decide to detransition, like this isn't right for you, you don't want it, you want to go back, dedicated free transition support. Medical reversal, counseling, no stigma. That includes trans people, especially trans activists. If someone decides to detransition, they're not rejecting you. They're not rejecting transition. They're rejecting it for themselves. Now, I understand there are some detransitioners that have turned into political, microphones to reject transition, to reject trans people. In a perfect world, people are mature enough to realize that they made a mistake or they were led to believe something and it wasn't right for them and they decided not to do it. But that doesn't mean that it should be taken away from everyone. Public outcome registry, something published, right? And a record so we know how well this is working. So we actually have data to make better decisions. That way maybe we can loosen some of these guardrails or adjust them where it makes sense to protect people, but to also make it easier for trans people. Self-harm and suicide is not the only reason to be able to do any of this. So no more threats of, well, they'll just kill themselves if we don't give them hormones. That's bullshit. We all know it. Annual outcomes, and this was designed to protect youth, eliminate any kind of gaming the system that might have been happening, especially for like 16, 17-year-olds that are getting hormones without anything but a quick appointment. And then support genuine adults who need this care. All right. Now we want to go to the other document, which is going to be a little bit more controversial, I think. Who would have thought that was possible? I posted this and it made some people who have done some wonderful things for the trans community. Both things I posted and it pissed them off and they felt personally attacked that I was saying everything they did was terrible. That is not what I'm saying. I'm just trying to offer something in the middle to stop this pendulum from swinging and hitting us right in the face every time someone else is in office. So, all that medical stuff is great. What about using the women's restroom or the men's restroom? What about prisons? What about shelters? What about locker rooms? Sports, leaving off the table at this point. I'm not talking about that personally. Trans women have an advantage unless you can prove otherwise. In fact, even the Olympic Committee just came back and said that, yeah, they have an advantage most likely. And so they're restricting trans people from competing, trans women from competing in women's sports. So that's where we are with that. But everything else, I think we can find is doable. So this is the SGRA 2025 Secure Gender Recognition Act. It's a 10-point legal framework to get us started down the road of legal recognition of transitioning. not like, think of it like a driver's license or something. It's a privilege to be able to use single sex spaces as someone born the opposite sex. And so if you meet this criteria, guess what? You meet the criteria of getting the privilege of using the women's bathroom, women's locker rooms. If you get locked up in jail, you get to be in the women's prisons as long as it's not violent or sexual. So, how does this work? The purpose is to eliminate self-ID loopholes so we can protect sex-segregated spaces while ensuring a legal pathway for sex gender recognition for trans-identified individuals. Gender marker changes. This is the main mechanism. A gender marker change requires rigorous vetting and zero tolerance for sexual criminal predation with automatic revocation if violated. You can't just self-identify and get your ID changed. A mandatory background check is required. So when you start this process, you get a background check to make sure that you don't have any sex offenses, violent felonies, stalking, etc. Automatic denial if there's any hit. Clean record required for those types of offenses. And juvenile records are unsealed. And so you can't even have convictions under the age of 18. You have 2 psychological evaluations. Now, it could probably just be one, so I'm open to it only being just one. But I feel like for certain people, women and children, and people who are very sensitive to that with trans people, that 2 gives a little bit more of a backing. So let's say 2 evaluations, making sure you had persistent dysphoria greater than 12 months, and you have some sort of medical treatment plan that's in accordance with the SOC I read. Now, that doesn't mean you have to do a certain treatment. I really want to stress that. The only thing you have to do the legal gender change and get recognized as the new gender is a confirmed dysphoria diagnosis and some sort of treatment plan. So the treatment plan could be see a therapist once a year. The treatment plan could be you're going to get everything else under the sun on the menu of transition, surgeries, hormones, you name it. Doesn't matter what it is, but you have to have something signed by a medical provider saying, hey, look, this is what they're doing to take care of dysphoria. Basically, that's why they need to be recognized as the other gender. Simple as that. Some of this came from the military transition process. That's where I was influenced with this because I felt like the military process was, while restrictive and gatekeepy, totally doable. And it made sure you went through the right things so that way you weren't just, hey, I'm this, and now all of a sudden I'm in your barracks and locker room. It's like, come on. Predators would love to have an easy pass into other spaces. And so there's been examples of that happening already. And then also, just because someone won't break into your house doesn't mean you don't lock the door. There's a chance. There's a chance someone is going to use a loophole of self-ID. And actually, a pretty good chance because it's happened already. And when someone walks into a bathroom that looks clearly like a man for a women's bathroom, there used to be social stigma to that you could call them out and say something. In the last few years, that became taboo to do that because they could be transitioning. And then when people were calling out these clearly creeps, that's the excuse they used. No, I can use this bathroom. I'm a woman. I identify as a woman. I'm trans. And they were creeping. So, and then the people calling them out were being ostracized for it, for not being tolerant. And so it creates a unsafe climate for calling out what's clearly not right and clearly someone who probably shouldn't be in there. You have to make an effort. Come on. Go through this process. Make sure this is right for you. This is not supposed to be a class thing. This should be available to everyone, regardless of income. But you have to put some effort forward before you can just walk into people's spaces. Now, of course, the argument which I've used, nothing keeps predators out of bathrooms anyway. But if someone sees someone who's clearly not putting effort into looking like the opposite sex go into a bathroom, you used to be able to call that out. So now you've got a lot of a lot of classical, what they call butch lesbians. Now you have a lot of them getting called out for being, men in the women's bathroom, right? So having this process means that if there is ever a dispute, there's ever an issue, and the police are called, someone makes such a fuss because of how someone looks, but the police are called, they can look at the ID and be like, no, their gender marker has changed. They're allowed to be here legally. And that means something. That means they passed a background check. That means they went through this process. They really have dysphoria, and they've really gone through something effort-wise to earn that privilege to be in there. In a perfect world, it shouldn't be a privilege. You should just be able to do whatever you want. No one would hurt anybody. But we're not living in the perfect world. We're living in the real world. Step 5. So once you've got your confirmed diagnosis and you've got your treatment plan, you go to a public safety hearing. Basically, you go before a judge. And they review all the evidence. And this could be done virtually. This doesn't mean you actually have to physically stand in front of a judge. And you know what I mean? It's just a process. Someone with legal authority that's independent looks over it and says, they've done everything they need. Stamp. Here is your permission to change your gender marker. And so you get a provisional certificate. This is good for 2 years that you would keep along with your license. So that way you can go out into the world, start using opposite sex facilities. And if after 2 years, everything's fine, you don't cause any issues or whatever, you get a permanent change. And so then that permanent change, not a permanent change, you get a change on your actual ID. And so when someone sees the change on their ID, they know you've already even gone through not only a diagnosis, not only a medical health plan of some sort has been approved for you, but you also went through 2 years in the very beginning with the certificate. So by the time it's actually changing your ID, it holds a lot of weight for those disputes with police and with other people about how you might look in other spaces. So even if you don't pass, it doesn't matter because you've gone through the legal process. You've met the requirements to be in there. So if there ever is a question, you don't have to deal with it. You just say, here, I went through the effort. I got it changed. And that's it. You don't have to look at anyone's genitals. You don't have to do any kind of inspections. It's all good. And then if there are people in there that don't have it changed and they get accused, there should be severe penalties for that. They should be disqualified from ever getting their marker changed because they tried to abuse the system and they didn't even get it changed, right? I think this is how we can fix this. I think we can really fix this. All right, so you get your provisional certificate. Every year you get a check-in with another background check. Once that's done, you're golden. You get your final recognition. And there's no difference between provisional and final recognition except that it's an additional piece of document along with your ID. All the privileges and access are the same. Once you get the full change, final recognition, you can update your birth certificate, passport, driver's license, all that stuff. And then you move on. You don't have to do any more background checks. You're good. You're fine. Now you have access to single sex spaces, including if you got arrested for a non-sexual violent crime. You're going to be with women. If you're a trans woman, you're going to have access to locker rooms, bathrooms, you name it. If you do get convicted of a sex offense, violent felony, or stalking or anything like that, you get a reversion. Your birth certificates and stuff all go back. and it's a permanent ban. You've lost your privilege. A conviction, not an accusation, not an arrest, an actual conviction will revert your gender marker back, and you just have to go back to the single sex spaces that you were using before. Doesn't do anything to your healthcare. You can still get all of the treatment. You can still present all you want. You can still do everything you were doing before. You just can't use single sex spaces that are the opposite of your sex assigned at birth. And then there would be a central registry for transparency. So you'd have this database of people who've gone through it. So private businesses like health clubs and stuff could verify. Mostly for the probational thing, but then also it would be anonymous. So you could verify through other methods in that database. It's more so for the people who, I guess it wouldn't be anonymous. Think of it like a database you can look up an identifier. That identifier doesn't have your name and stuff available, but it's like a number. Like Social Security, I guess, in a way. You put that number in the database, and the database comes back and says this number is valid. So that's a way outside of the ID to confirm, hey, this person is good to go. As in, they looked non-passable. We questioned why they were in those spaces. They provided this number. We pulled them up. Boom, done. And then also people who violate it, right? They get marked in that registry. And that way, someone who's abused it, right? For whatever reason, you can still verify. So it's a two-person, not two-person. It's a double check and balance. So you've got your ID that's been changed, all your birth certificate, everything. And then you also have this other database that certain people with certain access can see, just to make sure you're also in there as being someone who's good. And then a whistleblower hotline. I don't know how necessary that would be. Trying to think why I put that in there. Whistleblower would be someone who could call and report, I guess, abuse of the system. That might be unnecessary. I might have to rethink number 10. It's been about a month since I wrote this, and for some reason, number 10 made a lot more sense at the time when I wrote it. I'm trying to think. You've already got your gender changed on your license and stuff. Oh, say you're missing your ID. Yeah. The registry allows certain people access to go in and just verify. And if you're someone who is acting nefariously, the whistleblower can call in and report you, I guess. And yeah, I can't remember the whistleblower thing. That might not be needed because I can't remember what that would do. I might have to go back and look at my notes. Like I said, it was a month ago I wrote this, and it's all open for changes. But yeah, number 10 could probably use a little bit of clarification. But 1 through 9 seems solid enough for what I thought it would be. All right, so that is all of that. And I think that's about it. That's a pretty long explanation. I've got those dates. So December 2nd at Rozco's Comedy Club, 6 minutes, I'll be doing stand-up. And then December 26th at Vulcan Gas Company, I'll be doing 10 minutes. Signing up every Monday for Kill Tony and Mothership open mic. So hopefully I get picked, and I'm excited to tell new jokes. I've written so much more stuff to polish and work on. And I really think I can make it here in this comedy mothership world. I'm really excited. I think I've got a lot of momentum behind me. And with the documentary coming out, um, just barely over a year from now, so 2027. And then if my memoir does for sure get picked up and published, that'll come out around the same time, I think, if we can time it, because that'd be like a 1-2 punch for the documentary and my memoir. And I think by then I'll have made enough of a push in the comedy world to either have something to show for it, hopefully, or not. Maybe I'll have moved on by then. But I think if I keep up my progress with comedy all the way up to the documentary coming out and the memoir, I can't imagine not finding my way on Rogan's podcast by then. Because especially if I'm a club comic at his club, which is really the goal, because that would be awesome. That'd be sweet. Those people are great. I love the Mothership. I love going there. Everyone's so nice and so cool and funny, and it's just, I know I would get so much better, so much faster being around so many people that are so funny and so good. I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, I want to be in a room of people that are funnier than me and better than me at this, so that way I will progress and get better. And it just seems like a progression comedy school at the Mothership, like an accelerator. So I really hope I can get some regular nights at the Mothership and keep working my day job and commuting up to Dallas once a week for that. And then memoir documentary comes out. Yeah, it'd be good. Oh, and there's also the New York Times is doing a profile on me, I think. I've been working with a writer there who had portraits done of me and stuff, and I think that should be coming out very soon. They're waiting for the election to be over in November, so I'm gonna reach out to him and see what's going on with that. But that'll be another cool piece, I think, because it talks about my comedy pivot, and it's the first real deep dive beyond like the Slate article and the Observer article that touched on it briefly. This will be one just all about kind of my whole arc into comedy, and really excited for y'all to see it. But anyway, that's all for now, folks. Have a wonderful day, or evening, or weekend. Bye.